I stood outside Wilson and Sons Manufacturing, watching employees file in for what would be my father's retirement celebration. 40 years he'd spent building this company, and now my brother Marcus was about to take over as CEO. At least that's what they thought. "Miss, you can't stand here," a security guard approached, clearly not recognizing me. "The event is private." I smiled, remembering the last conversation I'd had with Marcus 2 weeks ago. "Emma, don't embarrass yourself by showing up," he'd sneered over the phone. "Dad doesn't want you there. You're not welcome here." Of course they didn't want me there. The daughter who'd walked away from the family business 5 years ago to start her own investment firm. The disappointment who'd refused to follow the carefully laid path my father had planned. "Actually," I told the guard, pulling out my phone to show him my ID, "I'm Emma Wilson." His eyes widened slightly. "I'm sorry, Miss Wilson, but your name isn't on the approved list." Mr. Marcus Wilson was very specific about that. I checked my watch, 9:58 a.m. In exactly 2 minutes, the morning trade would begin and everything would change. "That's fine," I said calmly. "I'll wait." The past 5 years had taught me patience. While my family was busy running their traditional manufacturing company the same way they had for decades, I'd been watching. Waiting. Building. My phone buzzed. A message from my broker. "Everything's in place. Trades execute at market open." 4 months, I'd been quietly buying up shares of Wilson and Sons through various shell companies. My father and brother, so confident in their control, never noticed the subtle shift in ownership. They were too busy planning this elaborate retirement party, where Marcus would triumphantly announce his succession as CEO. 9:59 a.m. I thought back to the day I'd left. "Manufacturing is in our blood," Dad had insisted. "This company will be your legacy." But I'd seen the warning signs, the outdated technology, the inefficient processes, the growing competition from more innovative companies. When I tried to suggest changes, Marcus had laughed. "Leave the business decisions to those who understand them, little sister." 10 a.m. My phone lit up with notifications. The trades were executing. Years of careful planning, millions of dollars in strategic investments, all culminating in this moment. Through the glass doors, I could see the party starting to gather in the main lobby. Employees in their best attire, champagne being poured, my father preparing to give his farewell speech. Another message from my broker. "Acquisition complete. 51% ownership confirmed." I straightened my blazer and walked toward the entrance. This time when the security guard moved to stop me, my phone rang. "Ma'am," the guard started, but I held up a finger as I answered the call on speaker. "Miss Wilson," my lawyer's voice rang out clearly. "I'm pleased to inform you that as of this moment, you are the majority shareholder of Wilson and Sons Manufacturing. Would you like me to inform the board?" The security guard's jaw dropped. I smiled, putting my phone away. "I don't think that will be necessary. I'll tell them myself." As I pushed open the glass doors, I caught sight of Marcus at the podium, getting ready to announce his promotion to CEO. Dad sat in the front row, beaming with pride at his son, completely unaware that their carefully laid plans were about to crumble. "You're not supposed to be here," Marcus hissed, spotting me as I walked in. "Security." I kept walking, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The room grew quiet, employees turning to watch the drama unfold. "Actually, brother dear," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I think you'll find I'm exactly where I need to be." I pulled out my phone, ready to show them the confirmation of my ownership. 5 years of being the family outcast had led to this moment. "After all," I added, watching Marcus's face turn pale as realization dawned, "shouldn't the majority shareholder be present for such an important company announcement?" The champagne glasses stopped clinking. My father stood up slowly, confusion etched across his face. And this was just the beginning. The silence in the lobby was absolute. Marcus gripped the podium so hard his knuckles turned white, while Dad stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "What did you just say?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly. I held up my phone, projecting the stock ownership documentation onto the large screen behind him. The same screen where he'd planned to showcase his grand vision as CEO. "As of exactly 10 a.m. today," I announced, my voice carrying through the stunned room, "I own 51% of Wilson and Sons Manufacturing. Would you like to see the paperwork, brother?" "Impossible," Dad finally spoke, rising from his chair. "The family owns controlling interest." We always have. I smiled, remembering all the condescending lectures about business I'd endured over the years. Did any of you bother to track the shell companies buying up shares over the last 3 years? Pacific Ventures? Summit Investments? Aurora Capital? Marcus's face drained of color. I knew he recognized those names. They were the promising new investors he'd personally welcomed to the shareholders' meetings. That was you, he whispered. All of it, I confirmed. Every single share. While you were busy planning your coronation as CEO, I was planning something else entirely. The employees watched in fascinated horror as their carefully scripted retirement party transformed into corporate theater. Sandra from accounting actually had her phone out, probably recording everything. This is a trick, Marcus declared, trying to regain control. Dad, she's lying. She has to be. I nodded to Jerry, my lawyer, who had quietly entered the lobby. He began distributing copies of the ownership documents to the board members present. The Securities and Exchange Commission filing has already been completed, Jerry announced. Miss Wilson is now the majority shareholder and has voting control of the company. Dad sank back into his chair, his retirement speech forgotten in his hands. Emma, why? The hurt in his voice almost made me falter. Almost. Why? I repeated, walking toward him. Because 5 years ago, when I tried to tell you this company needed to modernize, to adapt, you told me I didn't understand business. When I presented a detailed plan for digital transformation, Marcus threw it in the trash and called it cute. I turned to address the gathered employees. This company has amazing potential. Dedicated workers. Solid foundation. But under current leadership, we're falling behind. Our competitors are innovating while we cling to outdated methods. Marcus tried to interrupt, but I continued. Did you know our main competitor's manufacturing efficiency is 40% higher than ours? That we're losing contracts because our technology is 10 years behind. The board members were flipping through the documents, murmuring amongst themselves. I could see the moment they realized that not only had I acquired controlling interest, but I'd also developed a comprehensive modernization strategy. You're going to destroy everything Dad built, Marcus accused, but his voice lacked conviction. No, I corrected him. I'm going to save it. I pulled up another presentation on the screen. My vision for Wilson & Sons. New manufacturing technologies, automated systems, green energy implementation, and employee development programs. This is what I tried to show you 5 years ago, I said, meeting Dad's eyes. This is why I left. Not to abandon the company, but to learn how to save it. The room was silent as the numbers spoke for themselves. Projected efficiency increases, cost savings, revenue growth, all meticulously researched and planned. The board meeting will convene in 1 hour, I announced. We'll discuss the leadership transition and implementation of the modernization plan. Marcus stepped down from the podium, his retirement speech never delivered. You can't just walk in here and take over, he protested, but we both knew he was wrong. I already had. Dad stood up again, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The company was supposed to go to your brother, he said quietly. It was always supposed to be Marcus. No, Dad, I replied, equally quiet. The company was supposed to go to whoever could lead it best. As the employees began to disperse, whispering among themselves, I caught sight of my reflection in the lobby windows. I saw what they were all seeing, not the daughter who'd walked away, but the woman who'd come back stronger. The next hour would change everything. The question was, were they ready for what came next? The boardroom felt smaller than I remembered, though nothing had changed except the power dynamics within it. 12 pairs of eyes watched me take my seat at the head of the table, the chair that had been my father's for 4 decades. Marcus sat as far away as possible, his jaw clenched. Dad chose the middle of the table, a neutral position that spoke volumes. The rest of the board members seemed to be holding their breath, waiting to see how this corporate drama would unfold. Before we begin, I said, opening my laptop, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I orchestrated a takeover of my own family's company. Yes, I did it secretly. And yes, I did it today of all days. On Dad's retirement, Marcus cut in bitterly. Real classy, Emma. I met his gaze steadily. I chose today because I wanted to stop you from making announcements you couldn't fulfill. The promises you were going to make in that speech, about company growth, about maintaining our market position, They were empty and you know it. I pulled up our quarterly reports on the screen. We've lost 23% of our market share in the last 2 years. Our biggest client, Jensen Industries, is considering moving their contract to our competitors. Our technology is outdated, our processes are inefficient, and our talented employees are leaving for more innovative companies. The board members shifted uncomfortably. These weren't new problems, but no one had been willing to acknowledge them openly. And your solution is to throw everything away? Dad spoke for the first time, his voice heavy. To destroy 40 years of tradition? No, I replied softly. My solution is to honor those 40 years by ensuring the company survives the next 40. I started my presentation. The real one, not the surface-level overview I'd shown in the lobby. 3 hours of detailed analysis, modernization plans, and strategic restructuring. I watched their expressions change from skepticism to interest to genuine enthusiasm. The initial investment will be significant, I acknowledged, but I've already secured the funding. Within 18 months, we'll see a 45% increase in efficiency. Within 3 years, our market share will not only recover but grow. And where does Marcus fit into all this? One of the board members asked the question everyone was thinking. I turned to my brother, who had been unusually quiet during the presentation. That depends on him. The position of head of operations is open, if he wants it. Marcus's head snapped up. What? You know this company inside and out, I said. You understand our operations better than anyone. I don't want to push you out, Marcus. I want you to help me make this company better. Under you, he said flatly. Under the person with the vision and capability to lead us forward, I corrected. Tell me honestly, looking at these numbers, these plans, can you say I'm wrong about what this company needs? The fight seemed to drain out of him as he looked at the projections again. Slowly he shook his head. And Dad, I turned to my father, who had been studying me throughout the presentation. I want you to stay on as a senior advisor. Not because we need to maintain appearances, but because your experience is valuable. This company is your legacy, but legacies need to evolve to survive. The room fell quiet as Dad stood up. For a moment I was that little girl again, waiting for his approval. But I wasn't here for approval anymore. I was here to lead. You've thought of everything, he said finally. Just like you always did. He paused, a slight smile forming. I was wrong, Emma. 5 years ago I was wrong. I felt tears threatening but kept my composure. This wasn't the time for emotion. That would come later. Board members, I addressed the room, you have my complete strategy in front of you. I'm calling for a vote of confidence. Who supports this new direction? One by one, hands raised. Even Marcus, after a long moment, raised his. Well then, I said, standing up, let's get to work. Hours later, after the press releases were drafted and the initial announcements made, I found myself alone in what was now my office. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the floor. A knock at the door, Dad and Marcus. The employees are still buzzing, Marcus said, attempting a smile. I think Sandra from accounting is writing a movie script about today. I laughed, feeling the tension finally break. Well, it was quite a show. Emma, Dad stepped forward. I know I don't deserve to ask this, but can we start over? All of us.